Hello, everyone. This is Lily Tang Williams, and our weekly Immigrant Speak Show. I have a very unique special guest today, and Channy Niles, who survived Cambodia genocide and came to America at the age of 17. I met her last July at the VOC, Victim of Communism Memoir Foundation event. We were both on the speaker bureaus of that nonprofit organization and training teachers about our eyewitness stories. And so I'm so glad you can join us, Jenny. It's great to see you again here online. And please introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay, hi. I'm Channy Laux. I was born in Cambodia, and before the communists took over, I grew up in a very fertile farmland province of the Cambodia. We never had to experience any starvation. There's abundant natural resources and good farmland, and my family live in a two-story brick home. Very happy, very comfortable. We have like a car and even refrigerator and maid living in and all that. So, having all of that was during that time was it's like a luxury items. And that's possible because my father was a businessman. He was an importer and exporter from Cambodia to Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, even Hong Kong. But all that changed as soon as the communists took over the country. My life turned upside down. I spent 4 years working in labor camps, from labor camps to labor camps, starving, sick, being targeted because of my father's business and being separated from my family. And during that 4 years, I never spent a day, not even a single day at school or even have a book or reading anything. We just like labor constantly every day. And, for 4 years, during that 4 years, the communist government in Cambodia killed at least 2 million of my fellow Cambodians. And at the time when the killing started, I was 13 years old. Yeah. So, and this happened, when this happened, it doesn't happen like gradually. It's basically overnight. As soon as the Communist Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia, the very next day, they confiscated a weapon from a former regime soldier. And you can see a picture, you can, search it for yourself. There's a picture of how the Khmer Rouge soldier collect all the guns. And then they call a meeting to all the former regime soldier, and all the former soldier was executed. And, and the next thing they do, they evacuated us from our home. So if you live in a big city or even small town, you were evacuated from your home, basically overnight. I remember I woke up by gunfire, and the next thing I know, 2 soldiers with gun in my house, and they was demanding us to leave our home. They were yelling at my parents and screaming at us, leave or I kill somebody. And within 5 minutes, I was out of my home, and there was no time to ask questions, to plead for a little bit more time to pack anything. So when I stepped out of my home, I realized that there's chaos in the air basically, and there was all my friends, my neighbors, all packed in the street in front of our house, and we would keep pushing to walk away from the city on the highway. And instantly, I see people hungry, and there was no food. There's no provision for, here's food, here's water for you guys, so you can march to wherever they want us to march to. Mm-hmm. And basically, the next day, we got to this small town, and that small town was very remote. We stopped. Basically, they push us out from the highway and walk into like the horizon. You can't tell there's town or anything, but once you get closer, and you see little huts and places that I never even familiar with, or even read about. There's no bicycle, no decent road, only ox carts, and very primitive, and
so excuse me, this happened under Pol Pot, Khmer Rouge, communist basically communists took over. But
Yeah.
you there was a businessman, had a good lifestyle, even had the luxury items. And before Khmer Rouge took over, and what kind of system did you have before that? You had a pretty decent, like a middle class or upper middle class life.
Yeah, it's very peaceful. Cambodia is a very peaceful country before
Yeah,
that.
but 98% of Buddhists I heard in
Yeah,
Cambodia, right? People just
yeah,
kind of like doing their own thing and
yeah.
living good life and peacefully coexisting with other people,
Coexisting, and there was never heard of starvation. Is never heard of, because we the country is self-sufficient. We even have export, grains and produce to other part of the world. But as soon as they took over, that was gone.
So how did they take over so fast? And then people just had no chance even
Yeah,
to fight
right.
back. And of course, they disarmed people. But in terms of ideology, communism, what they believe, did the local people, like the Chinese peasants, who bought into Mao's communism because he promised you're going to have land and we're going to go after
Yeah,
people who are rich, who are landowners. So all those division, identity politics, and the workers, peasants rule. So demonize all rich people, all landlords and rich farmers. They bought into that. Then later, of course, they all starving to pass
right.
40 million
So
of them. What happened to Cambodia people?
yeah, so people are familiar with Vietnam War, right? And what happened is when the Viet Cong overflowed during the Vietnam War, overflowed into Cambodia, a group of Cambodian guerrilla soldiers, and they believe in Marxism, and they call themselves Khmer Rouge, and they rose up against the government in power. And so it was the first time that the first time Cambodian experienced civil war, and the civil war was between democracy and Marxism. So right after the Vietnam War end, when the American soldier withdraw from Southeast Asia, the Khmer Rouge took over the country. They won the civil war in Cambodia. And what they did, the following day, just like I told you, was taking you away from people that you love, like your community. They take you away from your community, place your familiars and people you trust and love. They right away take that away from you. And, like gun is another form of control. And then the next thing they do when you're away from your community, place you're familiar, your home, you have no way of feeding yourself. The very next day, you're already depending on government. And when you
Yes,
depend
that's
on,
exactly right. When you depend on government, they can do whatever they want to.
That's right. And when government give, government own. So they give us food. They not give us food. First they give us food, and then they start to ration. They ration us to the point that we're starving. We're dying from starving, and not because we don't have food, but because they want to be in power. They want to control you and make you do exactly what they want you to do.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you'll be starving to death. You don't get the food.
If you have food, you might fight them.
Yeah, like what happened in China too.
Yeah, and they're not only in Cambodia is when they take food away from us, they also take salt away from us.
Wow.
Because if you have, Cambodian is a very tropical country. You can take rice from me, but I go to the field and scout, collecting vegetation, wild vegetation. I can boil it, I can cook it, but when they take salt away from you, and everybody doing the same thing, go to the field and pick up things and to eat, those also become scarce.
Yeah.
Even the wild vegetation is we're not allowed to pick it because we're supposed to work for them. So
it sounds like Pol Pot really took a Mao and Stalin's tactics because he actually admired them, the communists, just like in the 50s land reform. All of a sudden, just like a government, officials and soldiers, they just march into your house and throw you out and take all your residential like a complex or courtyard buildings and to say you're out and you're bad class called a
they vilify you because you're successful. Yeah. And they do that. And even before the communists took over, I was 13 years old. I'm already familiar with what happened in communist country because my grandfather was a refugee from China. So growing up, he always explained to me how it was in China, and not so much him, but my father. Because I was too young to even, I don't really remember what my grandfather was talking, but my father kept sharing the story that in China, my dad has to do this and that, and they confiscate things that his family own, and that's why he escaped from, and he was being targeted because of his family status.
He
So that's
fled
why
China for Cambodia.
he escaped from China to Cambodia, and then the communists come to Cambodia, and I escaped Cambodia to America. And if it happened here, where do we go? We don't have
Yeah,
places.
that's scary. So when that happened, you lost your home, your family got kicked out, and you were age of 13. You were doing basically all the neighbor camps. And how did you survive in those 4 years?
Well, I think a lot of time when you go through such a terrible experience, I went to bed every night, pray that I don't wake up. Like, let me go. Whatever I did in, Buddhism belief, reincarnation, and I always said to myself that whatever I did in the past lifetime, I learned. I suffer enough. Let me go. Take me in my sleep. Don't make me come back. But then when they took me away from my parents, you're probably familiar. The government gives, government takes, and they own everything that you have, and they own your family. They take from you, they take your parents away from you, and to them that you are being rescued by the communist government, and you should treat them like your parent. Your parents was nothing. They had been corrupted. So they need to get better, and we're gonna help you understand the new way of life and living. And to me, when they take me away from my parents, that's when I want to live. But when I was, at the time when I was still with my parents, I just want to die. Just let me go, But when they take me away, I've gone through labor camp, from labor camp to labor camp, in really terrible conditions. Like you work all day without any break, and my feet, in the planting season, rice monsoon season, my feet is in the water all day long, and at the end of the day, I come back. There's not much to eat, and if I was thinking about my parents, I would still praying to die. Let me die. This is too much suffer, But I remember thinking that I want to see my parent again before I die. And that time, my prayer turned into, let me die in the comfort of my mother.
And were your parents and siblings all were not near you at all? Do you know where they were?
I kind of know what they were, but not sure. Because when I left them, they also being moved to a different town. Not, nobody telling you. When they took me away from them, one of my brother escaped, and because my brother escaped, we all become enemy, the enemy family, right? So they did horrible things to you, and they moved evacuate my parents from where they were to a different place, and every time they move you, it's the less you can carry with you. Your possession becomes nothing and nothing, less and less all the time. And every time they come to evacuate you from your hut or from your place, you don't get an hour. You got to go now, at the gunpoint. So you're asking me how you survive. It's a fighting to live for the other person, If I've gone through my own suffering, sometimes I felt like it would be easier if I refused a ration, and life would be no more suffering. But then I think about my mother, how she would cry, that she lost a baby, doesn't even know how her baby gone, And I couldn't imagine that. And to me, it was I fighting to live for my mother. She deserved that much, Life on earth, on this planet, deserve to care for their baby, and the communists take that away from you. They're trying to tell you that they know better than your parent for your future.
So what happened after your neighbor camps by yourself and just live for your family, for your mother, so you could see them again? So what happened near the end? Also during those 4 years, were you get beat up, and did you get sick, and were you abused?
I was during that 4 years, I never had enough to eat, and there's a lot of physical. Well, at one point, I decided to not listen to them, and I really wanted to see my mom again. So I determined that, and I know that if you break the law, they can take you, and they call it to be re-educated.
Mhm.
And in Cambodian, if you take to be re-educated, you never come back. That means they kill you, right? And I was determined that I said, you know what? I don't care if they kill me. At the time I was 16 years old, 15, and I decided to escape the labor camp to see my mom, and I got caught. And the soldier came to search for me, and I got caught. I was hiding in the bush, and they demand for me to come out. They said, "Come out, come out," yelling everything, like 4 or 5 soldiers. And I remember looking at them, without fighting, without saying anything. I was like determined not to follow their demand. And they were so upset because everybody always followed their demand, right? What is this girl doing, not listening to me? This is a bad example. So one of the soldiers grabbed me, and I was so skinny, and he yanked me out of the bush and threw me into the dirt, the dirt. And the dirt in the summertime in Cambodia is like a cement. And I remember all of a sudden, I don't see anything. It was all black, but I can hear. And I can hear them yelling, and, I don't know, just a lot of people was yelling, and I can feel the kick. Like they pulled my hair, drag me on the dry dirt floor, road. And they kicked my ribs and yelling and pulling and kicked my head. I feel it, but I couldn't see. At the same time, I was determined not to yell or plead. And I remember I feel the kick and all that, but I don't feel the pain. I was ready. I was like, I'm ready, I don't feel the pain. And I imagine, because I was ready, I imagined that angel was floating above me and comfort me and said, everything's going to be okay. And it's almost peaceful until I hear a lady scream. In Cambodian during the communist, you're not allowed to scream. You scream, that means you suffer. What are you suffering? You live under the communist. You should be happy. You should be grateful.
Right.
And it was my mom screaming. And she said, please, don't do this to my baby. Not, she's like frantically screaming, challenging them. When she screams, she's challenging them. She's so brave to express her emotion and love for her baby. And I said to myself, no, not like this. I'm not gonna let them torture me in front of my mother. So I tried to fight. I still can't see, I tried to fight to be on my feet. And finally, I was, they took me away, and I was able to be back on my feet, and they tied me, they tied my hand and paraded me around town. And when I were back before I got to the camp, they beat me up again, but nobody see. And they pushed me into, they made me stand in the fire ant nest, and I was getting bitten all by the ants.
Oh my God.
And I don't think I cried. I think that pissed them off, I was
Because
just
you did not comply, because you did not submit.
comply. I did not say, please stop,
You did not beg.
I did not beg.
Yeah.
And they when I got to the camp, they paraded me through the labor camp, and the next day I know all the girls doesn't want to talk to me.
So you had that internal strength to not to comply, and then you eventually kind of like recovered and get back on your feet.
Yeah, when I hear, I think it's
hear.
mentally, when I hear my mom cry, I knew I don't want my mom to see this. I came for her.
Yeah, you have to come back, fight, live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember one guy said, one neighbor said, oh, she's pleading to the soldier. She's just a young girl. She doesn't know what's right and wrong. And she's stupid, and then he also turned to me and said, get on your feet. Your mom shouldn't see you like this. And that is exactly what I fight for, to be on
Yeah,
my feet.
right.
And then I was able to recover, and then they stopped hitting me, and I walk away from it. But
So how did you get out of that situation?
so the next thing I had to endure was the girls in the labor camp does not want to talk to me anymore because I'm one of the bad person. They don't want to associate with me. But they didn't do anything else to me in terms of take me to like re-education or anything. So I continued to, moving from labor camp to labor camps. Um, it's just hard, some of the labor camp, and every day that's my life, and for 4 years, just to give you some perspective, for 4 years I lived under like 4 miles perimeter. All this labor camp, it seems like, when I was writing my book and trying to do more research about how far I was, because it felt like it's so far away, but when you're in the jungle, I haven't really, for 4 years, I haven't seen asphalt. I saw one time a truck, in terms of technology, or a truck drove by our road to come and pick up the rice that we harvest and collect it and clean. And that truck was a Chinese government with a hat, with soldier. They came to get the rice that we harvest. And when we harvest rice, we have some food to eat, enough rice to eat. But in the planting season, again, it's starving. It's like a cycle.
Can I imagine the nightmares you went through? Just so heartbroken. And so when you finally left the camp, how did you find your family after that?
Before my mom, we talk as a family. If anything happened, this is where I am. And if anything happened, you come and find me here. I will never go from here. Even if I die, I stand and wait for you here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, our communication. And so in 1978, I think it was, when the Vietnamese soldier invaded Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge was out of control. They left us, and the Vietnamese soldier, also another communist country, and they don't have a control of the people. So we had that split moment that we can find each other and be together. And that's what I did. I sneak around from when the Khmer Rouge abandoned us. I ran to where my mom told me that I would find her. And then by that time, it was just my mom, myself, and my sister. I had 5 people in my family. My 2 brothers was already escaped, and my younger brother and my father are trying to escape, but they didn't make it.
So they died on the trip of escaping?
They well, we heard what happened to them, for the people that escaped with them, that had survived, that they got caught by the Khmer Rouge soldier, and they was gunned down like an animal.
Unbelievable. And so when you finally could leave Cambodia, which year was that? You were 17, you said, right? When you came to America.
Right. It was in 1979. Yeah, 1979. So after the Khmer Rouge left us and the Vietnamese took over, it was, I remember my mom was saying that it's a new government. We don't know what our future is going to be, but we know it's not good because the Vietnamese is also another communist government. And by that time, we hardly have anything with us. Any jewelry that we might have early on, we exchange it on the black market, and we have nothing left. Mm-hmm. And it was only myself, my sister, and my mom in our immediate family. And I remember, during this time, when people decide to leave their country, their culture, the people that they're familiar with, it was a decision my mom made, not for her future, but for the future of her children. And I hear her say this many times. She pray out loud. He said, help me survive this escape, because we had to escape Cambodia to Thailand through the jungle, and we still don't know what's going to happen, And many times she would say, help me to survive so I can take care of my children. I've suffered enough, when she prayed to Buddha. And she would say, if it wasn't my children, I would rather stay in my country. And that is so true for people who came to this country. It's not for them, it's for the future of their children and future generation. And I felt similarly when I'm speaking out here about my experience. It's not that I ask for sympathy, but I speak out for the future of our children, not just my children, but the children, the next generation, um, to let them know what could happen and to educate them in terms of what you should be looking for, what sign, I mean, some of the things that I see happening here, it took me back to Cambodia, took me back to what happened right before the communists took over. And that's why I am speaking here today. And I'm
You're
glad you
courageous.
are.
Thank you so much for coming, telling your stories, because we are so in desperate needs for more immigrants like you to share their personal stories and sufferings under a communism. Because my three children were born in this country, and I do what I do, including speaking around and doing interviews, have my social media, have a YouTube channel like this, and even running for office. I tell my kids, because I'm really worried for this country. I'm living American dream now. I could just go in, maybe enjoying more time off, traveling around.
Yeah.
But I'm really worried about how about my children, and they're gonna get married, have grandchildren. What kind of country, America, we're gonna live in, or they're gonna live in?
Yeah.
You say, are you worried about some things going on today in this country?
I am, and I'm like you. It's not so much about my future. I'm 60 years old. How much do I have left? If anything happened, I won't stay here very long. But for the future of my children and American, future, when I say children, it's all the future generation. And I am worried, and that's why I wanted to let people know what I've gone through, and also to share a sign, things that happened remind me of what happened before the communists took over, and I want to bring that to attention to people who might think it's good. The communists, ideally, it sounds almost romantic. Everybody equal. There's no boss, no slave. Not that everybody's slave, but everybody work equal, share equal resource, share equal status. But that is so far from the truth. All they do is a group of ruler, and they get everything that they wanted. And for us, in terms of equal, it's like if you were like this high class and you were lower class, equal would be like you bring it up like this, right? Maybe that's okay. I guess it sounds okay to me too. But equal for them is like they bring everybody here and even lower in Cambodia. Because I tell you, experience I had about 2 years into the communists, the people that was peasant, even them complaining. They said, I hear that they said, before then, like the first year, and they was gung ho about, what happened here. This is great, but the second year into the communists, they said, I only have one pair of clothes to wear since it started. And even in the old time, my master would give me a new outfit to wear every New Year. So that is true. Not just the outfit, but everything. Everybody's going lower and lower.
And yeah, lots of people don't know that though. American young people, they're not educated about real horror history of communism and all they call that, Democrat socialism, and they believe in Karl Marx, and they believe in collectively people own means of production, and everybody is not that's why they talk about equity now. Everybody have guaranteed an equal outcome, and they don't understand. They were even attacking me on Twitter to say, you did not survive real communism. They might tell you that after you share your story. So that society you survived is not real communism.
It's
I
know.
Yeah, it's like
the same thing.
People died in Cambodia. Probably 60 million people died in China under the communist regimes.
Yeah.
And so many people, they're waiting to let them to die and lose their lives in order to fulfill their utopia in paper, in theory, that will never come.
Yeah.
It's terrifying for our youth to believe that.
Right. And they did, for example, the cancel culture took me back to what happened before the communists took over. There was like riot, like months before the communists took over. There was riot to the shop owner because they group of Cambodians believe that if you're a businessman, you're not doing a physical labor. You must be a pig, a crook, um, uh, you know, exploiting other people hard labor. In case of my father, he was a son of a refugee from China, right? So he was brought up very poor. There was no program to help refugee in Cambodia during those time. So my father never even spent a single day at school, but he worked hard, and eventually he able to own the business. But it didn't matter to them how he got to own his business. All they see was you're the business owner, so you must be a crook. You take advantage of people, exploiting people who have to put in physical labor. And it just, when I see, during the looting and burning.
2020, yep.
Yeah, it took me back to that time. And I can understand some of American kids that they may think that, what we have is terrible. And the other thing that everything is equal sounds better, because at 13 years old, I remember, things happen. People talking about before talking about the communists, they call it the red. They talk about the red versus the current. And I remember the propaganda, and I was thinking, this is before the communists. I observed that my father sitting in the office, and he had worker working for him, physically, lifting grains and put grains on the trucks. And maybe they're right, he should be doing some of that. Or maybe it's not a bad thing that, people grow together, have the same status, the same wealth, the same resource. I know that my father started from scratch. At that time, I was thinking, maybe the communist is right. Can you believe that, right?
Because the propaganda is feeds you every day.
It sounds good, ideally, but in reality, I know some people actually decide to take their own life, because at the end, even though they were supporting the communists, the Khmer Rouge, at the end, it's not what they were fighting for. So they decide to took their own life just because it's not what they expected. That's not what they fight for. It was
Also,
all
they were demonized, and they were demonized, and they say there's no way out. Even they want to end the suffering. Like during the Mao's Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 76, like 20 million Chinese were murdered. Were among them, you have also called 5 black classes, include like people like your father who were poor, who started business. They are deemed to be like just basically rich land owners and the farmers, and even they all own communism regime, supported scientists, intellectuals, artists, and people even go back to rebuild China from overseas. They all feel so excited about new funding of people of Republic of China in 1949, and then they were all thrown under the bus. So when the dictators come into power, they don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care, because if you dare say one thing is wrong, one thing is not politically correct, then you lose your status. You lose everything overnight. You get thrown on the bus, like go to labor camps.
Yeah.
Then you die.
Suicide, Right. And sometimes when I tell my friend, I have a good friend who have different idea than me in terms of, how this country going. And when I explained to them, and they got my good friend, they said, oh, but it won't happen in this country. I was like, no, that's what my father said, during the, right before the communists, he had coffee with his friend. I overheard what he said. And he said, my father, he said, this is my father's word, said, my father was escaping China, and China was turned into communist because out of necessity, because part of China was so barren that people were starving. So communism was necessity to make sure that to keep people alive and all that. But that won't happen. What happened in China won't happen in Cambodia. Is my dad's word, because Cambodia is self-sufficient. We never have to experience starvation and all that. So it won't be as bad if it happened here. But you know what? It's worse than it happened in China. And when I told my friend, they almost feel like they're sorry for me. No. If it happened here, you're going to be sorry. I can survive. I've gone through it. I'm talking for you, not for me. I don't want sympathy. I want you to understand what happened. And I'm talking about fact. It's not opinion. I just want to tell you what happened. Sharing my experience. That's all I wanted to do. For 4 years in the communists, I never gained any weight. I lose weight basically. But the bottom line is that the one that's really strange was my hair never grow. I went in
not
the
have enough nutrition to grow your hair.
That's right, right. And my older sister and cousin, they had their menstrual, they all stopped. Yeah, all stopped. And yeah, right. So, and to me, you know, before I came here, I was thinking I gave up. Even on the flight to America, I gave up about what the future is going to be. And I was content with the idea that I would clean people's house and make a living, but at least I won't be scared for my life and save. Maybe I have a place for my mom to live and all that. I never thought that I could go to college. And I have this feeling that it's okay because I've gone through physical and emotional torture. You know, I felt like I'm physically stunned and mentally stunned of what I've gone through. But I think the education in this country prior to recently was very flexible. You know, if you don't know English, I teach you English. And then we go from there, you know. I came here, learned ABC, left Cambodia when I was 7th grade. When I came here, they tell me to go to school on 10th grade. But my point is that I was able to succeed and grow at my own rate, all because of what this country gave it to me, a second chance of life. So when I hear people say, well, you're being discriminated when you get here, I say, you guys don't know what we've been through, do you, right? Discriminate, what are you talking about? Were you traumatized by this? Maybe some people think that I'm traumatized by my experience, but I felt like the more people ask you if you're traumatized or you need help, I felt like what I've gone through, nobody should have to go through. And I take it as a thing could be really bad, you know. I learned from it and tried my best to live a second chance of life as much as I can.
You have incredible strengths and actually lots of immigrants like us, we all just love this country and consider our humble background. Now you are a business owner, you have your own restaurant, you have your own like a manufacturing food business. I'm a business owner working from home. We'll just love this country, and American is probably the most exceptional country on earth for us to come here and with nothing in the home and love living American dream. It's just so sad and terrifying to see that so many people in this country are demonize America, want us to hate America by using race and skin color. And instead of in communist regime in China, Cambodia, they use class. They use you're poor, you're rich, or you're intellectual or not, and how much you have and have not. It's the same thing called identity politics. Why can't we just love each other and live peacefully together, have a good life? No, they don't want that, because otherwise the communists cannot take over a country. They have to sell this evil ideology to especially our young people who don't know history. That's why they are controlling the curriculum, the classroom. They're pushing for critical race theory, equity, all that agenda, and even like mess up our kids' identity, and doing the transgender stuff in our K-12 schools. Minor children, instead of readings and math and science and know your constitutional rights, knowing your civics. We're going to have like a parental rights bill tomorrow in New Hampshire. I'm hoping people will show up to support that. So how are you doing in California? Like, do you get to go to kind of tell your stories and how do people like receive your message, your stories from you?
So whenever I get a chance, I go to talk about my experience, and I stick with experience because that's it's not my opinion. I'm sharing with the people about what I've gone through, what happened. It's facts, right? And I think sometimes people challenge me to say like, but for the most part, I felt like, every time I talk and maybe I touch one or two person, it's still worth it for me, because there's people who said, well, what you've gone through is not communism, it's not Marxism. It's like, I can show you a picture of Pol Pot. When he had his leadership meeting or whatever you called it, there's Karl Marx was right behind him, right behind in the background. So you can't tell me that it's not communism, So I would say that if nothing at all, it was communism that got people behind it. At the end, they can take over and morph it to any form they like. So I continue to talk whenever I get a chance.
I'm glad you got a book. Can you show us your book that and people can order from Amazon?
They can actually order from either Amazon or my own website. Yeah.
Okay, tell people about your own website.
It's channychilox.com.
Okay, that's your website called the Short Hair Detention.
Yeah, the book is Short Hair Detention. I choose that title because I wanted to communicate to young children grow up in this country that even the length of your hair being controlled by government. You know, during that 4 years, all girls must keep your hair above your shoulder.
Yes,
And,
or braids or ponytails.
Yeah, right. And if you read into the book more, not only your hair, but who you marry was
Yes.
picked by the government. What you eat, you know, you don't, when you have a place in a hut, you know, we live, after the communism, we live in a hut. A hut only a place for you to sleep. When you eat, you go to the longhouse, eat for everybody in the community. You're not allowed to have pot, pans, or stove. You're only allowed to have teapot. So to warm up water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's terrible.
It's all control, right? That people
It's
don't
total
understand.
control.
Yeah.
And I would like to say the total control, it's against human nature. You know, when you see children, when they learn to walk, they learn to do things, they always said, I do it. I want to do it. I want to do it myself. I want to tie my shoe. I want to, you know, put my own clothes on. But the communists will take that instinct away from you. They want to do everything for you. The more you become independent and strong as an individual, you know, they hate it. You know, as a parent, you want your kid to be independent, to be strong, to be successful. And they want to control that. They want to take that away from you. You don't have to do that. We'll give you free this and free that. And eventually the ration become the free thing that we got from the government. It's become ration.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's
why in college, even Columbia recently, they canceled all the academic tests to get into their university, like ACT, SAT. And then there's a Georgetown University Law School, and one student asked a question about their policies on COVID-19 and very tyrannical on campus. And he basically got ordered to go through psychiatric evaluation to say, how dare you even ask a question like that? That's prestigious elitist law school in Georgetown University. You want your students to comply, don't ask questions, don't think for yourself. How dare you? So it's terrifying for us to say that, because they want to get rid of your free thinking and free thought and free speech. Then you just comply and they take over, and then they tell us what you survive is not real communism. 100 million people died in the past 100 years.
And Lily, what you're saying is a pattern. It's a pattern that happened in China, happened in Cambodia, and it's probably happened in all the communist country. The pattern is that they believe that whatever your experience, your qualification, it doesn't matter. They get their comrade to take your job. That's a higher you know, they get their supporter. You don't have to be training. We'll train you on the job. And the next thing
political agenda driving has nothing to do with individual merit.
Right. And the next thing you know, you're being treated by a nurse, call themselves a nurse, who have no formal training. How do you like that? It affects your life instantly. But that's, you know, to them, it's like, well, you know, you're human, and this person's also a human, their comrade. Whatever you can do, we can do it too. No need for training.
Mm-hmm. So I was talking about Andrew Mao when he reopened the colleges. You know what? Who gets priority into colleges? All 5 red classes, not black classes. So peasants, workers who they even trying to recruit my dad, who were like illiterate and could not even read, could not, you know, had to bring homework to me to help him. It's like, oh, because we're red class, you should go to college. And my dad said, I don't want it because I cannot read. It's stressful for me. So that's what I say. It's like you know, they basically, it's all become collective thinking, not based on American way, which is, you know, academic excellence and individual responsibility and the merits. It's very scary. I'm so worried for this country. That's why we have this show. But I thank you so much to come here to join me. And I hope you can tell other people about our program. We need a lot more immigrants like us, because we see the writings on the wall, and we know, and we love this country. We don't want what happened to us happen to Americans, and Americans, you know, and future generations, right?
Right.
So if go ahead and tell people where they can follow you and find you.
Absolutely, Lily. And I appreciate your effort in guiding us and leading us and have this program. I think it's you know, all the immigrants should support you. if you really care for this country. You came to this country, and we get supported from, prosper in this country, and we want our children to tell the difference between freedom and suffering, I guess. And they learn about us and see the sign and prevent, how only through education and knowledge will they maintain their freedom.
Well said, and maintain our freedom, prosperity, and the American dream. That's what I really want people to come here to defend all that. And thank you so much, Channy. I look forward to seeing you again this summer in July, and to participate in teachers training programs. And please share, like our video, get the messages out. Her story is tragic, heartbroken, and we don't want this to happen. Just remember, Channy's father said, when he fled communism in China, it will never happen in Cambodia. Then all of a sudden, happened so quick overnight. It can't happen here unless we start to ask questions and exercise our parental rights and control the education now, instead of let this ideology, evil ideology, going to push down our children. Well, it's great to see you here, Channy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we will put your social media links, your book links, and everything, and under the video description. And I hope people will go get your book and read your book and share your stories.
Thank you.
Goodbye.